This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The year was 2018. I was about 11 years old, bored on a vacation, and I had brought my trusty sketchbook and pencil case to fill the time. This is the masterpiece I conduct, and I titled her Pastel Girl. We skip forward a year. I had newly switched to drawing digitally, and I stumbled upon a challenge online, redrawing old art. Simple, I thought, and as I scoured through my old sketchbook, I found her again. Sure, I drew this about a year ago. I'll redraw her again for the challenge. Another year passed. Oh, it's around the same time as last year I redrew this. I could do so much better now. I'll try redrawing it again. And so I did, not realizing what I'd done. Well, I've already redrawn her so many times, it would be sad to end it now. It was too late for her. I mean, I gotta continue it.
I can't just stop
It's too
now.
late to stop
Just
now.
now.
I gotta
Stop.
Redrawing the same piece for 8 years in a row, because I can't stop now. This year, I did probably the biggest change to a design that I have ever done, but before I get into that, we gotta ask the most important question. Who even is this mystery pastel girl? Meet Penelope, a character who I didn't properly name until 2022, instead referring to her simply with Pastel Girl or Bubblegum Girl. She is probably my oldest character that I still consistently draw every single year. I have also, by some miracle, managed to record every single year's version, apart from the first traditional one. And those repaints you'll be seeing as I go into everything leading up to this year's version of her. Interestingly, the first few years I actually wasn't one to make my own characters at all. Usually any character I drew would start and end within a single illustration. Backstory was simply not a part of my creative process. The fact that I accidentally kept this OC just by redrawing her again and again is the only way that her character actually survived long enough for me to fully flesh her out. Now she's one of my baby girls though, she's not going anywhere. It's funny because you can tell from the year that she got her name, in 2022, exactly when I started properly making my own characters. Until then she was more of a concept, or like a design, one that I used to show how I'd grown artistically each year. Wait, I feel kind of bad now. Like I treated her like a Tinder guy would have. No, don't worry babe, I've just been so busy. We'll hang out next year. It's so fun. What's your name again? Don't worry, this year she became an actual character, and she was named Penelope. I decided that she would be living in the same sort of world that we are, so the only way I could imagine her looking like this in her day-to-day would be if she was either chronically online or like a cosplayer. She'll be a Twitch streamer! For that direction, I felt like she looked too whimsical still, so I ended up changing her design a bit. I gave her 2 long blue pigtails, which did arguably look a bit like Miku, and my solution to this was completely just rolling with it, saying she used to be a Miku cosplayer who then got her own following online and changed up her brand/design with time. Then in 2024, I tried to go into more about the person behind this brand. What was she like? What did she enjoy doing? I decided that she would be a Canadian with quite a heavy accent, and that she really enjoyed ice skating in her free time. And I thought it would be interesting if she dressed so vividly whilst being online and streaming, so that she would be less recognized in public when she just looked like her normal self. I kinda ended up falling in love with this idea and this character behind it all, yet still something felt wrong about it. It was a really cool character, but it wasn't really her either. I felt like I'd lost the pastel girl within this design, her original idea. So let's go back. Why did 12-year-old me even draw this character? I think we've all had these moments in our childhood where it felt a little bit like we were on a deserted island. Like no matter how loud we yelled, no one would be able to fully hear or understand us. Because growing up can be really hard. And when little 12-year-old me felt like I was on that island, I drew her. A girl with colorful clothes and hair, existing in a simpler world where everything could truly just feel okay. Like many other childhood characters, she was an escape. And though I didn't realize it at the time, I was also drawing her to envelop myself in that world. A world that was fantastical, colorful, and fun, where people would dress like her and no one would bat an eye. But this new version of her wasn't that. This version is stuck navigating the same world and challenges that we do, and that was never really what she was made for. So I am going to try something that I have never done before. I am gonna split her character into 2. One keeping her streamer backstory, the Canadian girl who enjoys ice skating and dressing up, and the other keeping her design, with this idea of a whimsical and fun world that she gets to be a part of. And this is the girl that I will be focusing on today. So let's reintroduce Penelope. Welcome to the concept art. One thing about me is that I grew up with Western cartoons, which maybe didn't feature as much of the magical girl theme as you'd often see in the Eastern cartoons, but it definitely still had a lot of the magic within it. So it only felt right that Penelope would be a fairy. There's lots of different types of fairies, but I am talking about the modern stereotypical humanoid character with translucent wings who has their own set of magical powers. Her design will definitely be more akin to something like Winx Club's designs, as I don't intend to make her very small in size or particularly nature inspired. One thing that took me a while to figure out was her outfit. My immediate thought was that I should put her in a big dress that puffs out a bunch and makes for a bunch of fun silhouettes, which is adorable and I do love it, but I was also juggling trying to make it feel like her. This is a character who I've had with me for years and years, so I had this gut feeling whenever something didn't quite look right, meaning it took a lot of experimenting, but that's fun too. I just got to draw lots of cute dresses and clothes. An important step for this was finding reference pictures that I could pull my inspiration from. For me, that meant creating a Pinterest board with images that felt like her in vibe and in aesthetic, and then also images of clothing that I thought would maybe fit her. That made it 10 times easier to come up with new designs to try out and to see what works. A lot of the ideas I drew out I didn't actually end up going with, but that doesn't really mean it was a waste of time. Figuring out a solid design that you personally love is arguably the most important step. Otherwise, you're going to be jumping into illustrations with characters you don't even fully enjoy drawing or how they look. And worst case, you won't even feel inclined to draw them at all. So take your time in fleshing them out, and don't judge yourself if it takes a while. Character design is a lot of trial and error, but that is the fun part. I also ended up deciding that I definitely wanted her to return to her old hairstyle with the half up, half down pigtails, as it was around the time that I switched to the fully up pigtails that I felt like her design and story really began to diverge from this fun and whimsical concept. In the end, I put her in a flowy dress that's a little bit longer on one side, with some baggy jeans underneath to continue the denim theme of the previous years. And then I also gave her some fairy wings, of course, and some big pink shoes. You've probably noticed that she's also rocking a staff, which has to do with her magical powers. So how did I come up with those? For her magical powers, the first thing that came to my mind was how I used to refer to her as Bubblegum Girl. Bubblegum isn't really a concept that is often fit into magical powers, like maybe the element of water or fire sometimes is, but I really enjoy when characters have super unique or just a very specific set of powers. So the idea of her having powers centered around bubblegum got me really excited. It was a lot of fun to figure out how this power of hers might work and what things she can use it for, or like how it can be interactive with. Although I also wanted to kind of merge the idea of bubblegum with just normal soap bubbles, as I didn't really want her to be chewing stuff constantly. So that's where the staff comes in, which I tried to make resemble one of those bubble blowers you would buy at a corner store, but just a lot bigger. I'm thinking she can make these bubbles from nothing, just using her hands as well, but using the staff is a lot easier and makes for a lot bigger bubbles. Initially, when she forms a bubble, it's a lot softer and can sort of flow in the wind as well, but then after a few seconds it denses up a little bit and is more similar in texture to maybe bubblegum or even some rubber. But the fun part is then what she can do with them. Her normal sort of ability is making a bubble with her staff, and then when it's solidified she can hit it again with her staff, kind of like a baseball bat, which then sends her bubble flying towards her target, and when it hits, it explodes. The explosion size then depends on how big the bubble is. I thought it would also be really fun if she could maybe make a bubble around another object. Like imagine if she made some around like a crap ton of glitter, and then when she hits it towards someone they get like a huge glitter bomb in their face. Her second ability is changing the shapes of these bubbles. She can mostly do this while they're in the solidifying process still, as they can be harder to stretch out when they're made out of a rubber texture. But basically she can make balloon animals with this, and then she can send them off to explode. I'm not sure what practical use this would have, but I'm sure she could come up with something. Her third ability, and probably my favorite, is her spinning her staff super fast to create a storm of bubbles. These are smaller in size, but there are also so many of them that she can sort of form a wall with them, which is very useful for defense. And lastly, all of her bubbles can float. So she can make a really big one that she likes to float around on, or she can attach them to other objects and people since it's kind of like a bubblegum texture and sticky. And then off to the sky they go. I hope that with this new design her personality shows really well. As beforehand, she was sort of an entertainer character with a good bit of sass in her, but now it's meant to be more about her interacting with the world around her and being very aloof and sort of curious. Those old traits of hers I instead want to move into the other character which came from this split, who I will design someday, but not today. Maybe I'll make a later video or something, but we'll see. For now, the Canadian girl is archived away. And don't worry, you'll get to hear more about this world which Penelope inhabits and why she has these magical powers suited for fighting, which will be in the next phase featuring the final illustration, which which I struggled a little bit on. I actually ended up redoing my initial piece and I repurposed that pose into the character sheet that you saw before, since I wasn't really sure how to approach it. This was this year's final illustration of her. One illustration to sum up like a year of art progress, and that can be a bit intimidating to start. So to help me ease my nerves a little bit and remind myself of these skills I've been growing, I decided to go watch a class about drawing and stylizing the human body, which was made by Sarah Holiday over on Skillshare. Whilst watching it, I remember having a sort of aha moment when she went over the joints and how there are different types. Like your elbow is a hinge, your hips is like a ball socket, and then there's also pivoting ones, like how your forearm can twist. And realizing how these joints were different from each other and actually moved and worked helped so much. I feel like I've drawn these parts of the body so many times, yet I've never quite been able to understand how they each move and interact with each other. So learning that one bit of information really just made everything sort of fall into place in my head. I can honestly say that I walked away from that class feeling much more confident and excited to start drawing again, which is why I really recommend checking out Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform with one of the largest communities for creatives. On there are so many categories and thousands of classes made by industry professionals. And if you're worried you don't have the time for 1,000 classes, just go ahead and take a class on time management instead. There's plenty of those too. The amazing thing about this platform is that you really don't have to follow a set schedule or complete this class in a set amount of time. You can really just go about it at the exact pace that fits you best. But at the same time, I've also found that these classes still manage to keep you really well engaged, as each sets up a class project that you can choose to do. Or you can just snoop around and see how everyone else that posted a finished project did. I really enjoy this learn by doing approach that they have with their projects, and how there are classes set for basically any skill level. So whether you're new to say anatomy, perspective, character design, or just looking to brush up on your skills, it's an amazing option and one that I can wholeheartedly recommend. And the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now on to the final illustration. Welcome to the final illustration. The very first step was doing some super quick sketches to figure out how I wanted the composition to be. Usually the way I do this is by zooming out extremely far on the canvas so that it is literally impossible for me to delve into the details. All that matters in this stage is the composition. After I figured out the basic layout of everything, I go in to refine the anatomy and the perspective. This is basically me taking it from an idea to how would this thing actually look like from these angles. Having the design and outfit already be figured out at this point was essential. Otherwise I would have probably gotten stuck and frustrated a lot more times. It's good as well to fully flesh out a design before jumping into it, as you can actually use it to your advantage for the composition. Like with this piece, I decided to integrate the staff and having her make a huge bubble going from the background to the foreground, which was to try and draw you into this image. But I would never have been able to make that decision without already knowing her powers and her design. I only mentioned this specifically because I would pretty much up until 2022 just jump straight into the illustration process immediately, and then I'd just try and figure out the design as I went. I could not do that anymore. No thank you. That being said, it still took me a lot of time to properly sketch out the clothes and anatomy, as I was 1, not having a great art day, but also 2, I had just gotten out of wisdom teeth surgery and I was struggling. It's alright though, I do eventually figure out how I want it to look like, but in the meantime I can go a bit more into the world that she lives in. So Penelope is a fairy, meaning she is from the fairy realm, separate from our reality. But these fairies are still connected to us, as they are the main protector of our human stories. Any story that gets written down, turned into a movie, whatever the case may be, they have sworn to protect. What is there to protect them from, you might ask? Well, it's something that chips away at almost every story, ruining characters, causing retcons, and worst case, ending them entirely. They're called the bookworms, a hive mind of creatures that infiltrate stories to spread and to consume. The bigger the story, the bigger the meal. You may have already seen a story that's been infected before. They start off slow and inconspicuous, maybe ruining a character arc here and there, causing some pacing issues, but nothing too major. But when it's spread far, the retcons happen, and the butchering of stories begin. Not long after that, everything that was and is within this story will cease to exist. The fairies are here to prevent that, to keep our stories alive and told between us. Their work includes diving into these stories, figuring out where these bookworms have spread and trying to eliminate them. The worms will oftentimes hide as characters or even as places, but something will always feel off about it. It can be as small as a character acting slightly different, or as big as an entire place being out of time with the rest of the story. Either way, a worm always has a tell. When they're ready for work, the fairies are usually sent out in teams teams, where they wake up in a new world and are there to save it. And this is where we meet Penelope. Penelope, like every fairy, has her own unique ability. Hers is that she can create bubbles and manipulate the shape of them to help her in the fight against the spread. But while she takes her role seriously and works very hard, she also has a tendency to get distracted. She is a very curious fairy, and every new world she enters is like a mystery to her. How do the people talk here? How does this technology work? How do they even get around without flying? Because of her excited and bubbly nature, the high fae usually send her into stories that are a little bit more lenient and where stealth might be less important. In other words, she's not the most high-ranking of fae, but her efforts are still appreciated, as someone has to watch over the kids' cartoons that get way too many seasons. Those stories are riddled with worms. Occasionally, however, she will still be sent out to higher stakes stories, as the fairies struggle to keep up with the increasing amount of attacks. As there's been something happening with the spread of worms recently. It's been growing faster and more stories are being lost to it. It's like there's something or someone pushing it along. And because of this, Penelope worries that her powers won't be enough to carry her weight in the fairy realm, as they all depend on stories for energy and life, meaning if they lose enough stories, they will lose everything. One day, as Penelope was walking around, getting used to a new story and world, while scouting for some inconsistencies and bookworms, she discovered something. A breadcrumb left behind by an old fairy, one that was thought to be long gone and lost. Just then, only one emotion was visible on Penelope's face: fear. But that is all I will be saying about her story for now. But if you want to hear more about the lore, then don't worry, I will probably continue elaborating on her world at some point in future videos. I got a bunch of cool ideas in mind that I want to get to eventually. If you have any ideas yourself of this universe and headcanons you're building up, then please go write them in the comments. I always love getting to see everyone's theories and thoughts on my characters, so absolutely go ham. I encourage it. I definitely know I want to design more of these fairies, as they're oftentimes teamed up in groups and on these different missions together. And that's a big part of the fun for me. I think I've always really enjoyed shows like One Piece and My Hero Academia, specifically for how each person's unique ability can interact with another person's. I just really love the creative combinations that you get to come up with for each character's fighting styles or just silly general moments. Like, imagine Penelope fighting alongside someone with poison powers. Maybe they would conjure up a poisonous gas and she could trap it in a bubble and then send it flying into an enemy's face. Or what would it be like if she had to go against someone with wind-like powers? Her bubbles would be almost impossible to properly control against them. That's another thing I wanted to touch on actually, how these bookworm-like creatures are supposedly a hive mind who can then possess characters and change things within these stories, which means they're not just fighting actual worms, but potentially characters from within this story or even another fairy that they managed to possess, who would then of course have their own unique abilities too, which could be very frightening if they took over a very high-ranked fairy. Man, I have so many cool ideas with fights and stories. But that is to be discovered on a later date. What's really funny to me about this concept as well is that I can technically make fan art of her being in any like show or series and it's like canon to me, because this is just her stepping into a story and trying to find bookworms. Man, they really should have watched over Game of Thrones a little bit more. Anyway, for now I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the actual illustration itself. And man, oh man, you can probably tell that I struggled a lot. I need you to put your trust in me, okay? It does end up looking better, I swear. And yes, I did make her hold up a peace sign for the 4th year in a row. I didn't want to break that tradition, okay? I think one of the big reasons I had such a tough time sort of approaching this piece is because I didn't really do a proper thumbnail sketch, which is why I'll do an extremely rough drawing and then plop down some very quick color to properly understand the direction that I'm going to be taking the drawing into. But I kind of sort of forgot to, didn't do, rushed into, hope for the best, skipped that stage, and was therefore left to figure out a lot of the decisions later on, and I'm not good at those. I don't like decisions. Especially with the face, you'll notice that I go over it multiple times, which I think touches on another point that I'd really like to improve on for next year. In general, I'm kind of unsure of my art style. And when I say art style, I don't necessarily mean the way I draw noses every single time or making it super recognizable, but instead just figuring things out like how I want my general workflow to be when I make an art piece and being really comfortable within that. And just having a more clear, immediate feel for how I want something to look. Like being able to visualize in my head, oh, this is the sort of face I wanted to have. Since I feel like I too often generally just shoot in the dark regarding those things. And then I draw and I render until something finally looks good enough to me, instead of just approaching it with a proper plan or idea in mind. I basically just want to feel like I know what I'm doing a little bit more, and I have a lot of specific areas that I'd really like to improve on as well, like stylizing anatomy and using shape design in visually pleasing ways, as well as just overall compositioning and the use of texture in digital art, which I find really cool. Then there's stuff like backgrounds, and I'd also really like to understand fabric and folds better and trying out some new color schemes I'm not at all used to. I just want to expand my comfort zone a lot within art. And to be fair, I do think I definitely improved within certain areas, specifically between this year and last year. Like, I feel like my character designs have become a lot more fun and something that I personally enjoy to draw. And my storytelling I feel like has improved a lot too, which is something I'm really happy about. Same with my editing skills of these YouTube videos and just marketing in general. But in terms of my actual technical drawing skills, as well as overall confidence when I'm making a splash art sort of illustration, I'd say I have a lot left to improve on. And that's okay. I can't really beat myself too much up about it, since I'm also aware that this year was more of a surviving year rather than a drawing all the time and putting all my energy into that year. I think a cool part about doing one of these pieces every single year is that it not only tracks my artistic growth, but also where I was at that point in my life. Like, there's some obvious points to notice, like between the first and second year I switched to drawing almost completely digitally, but there's also a lot of invisible parts that only I really know the influence of. Like how between 2020 and 2021 I did basically nothing but anatomy studies for a year, meaning I was more comfortable drawing a fun ankle and doing a full body compared to the year prior, but I also felt less comfortable doing a finished rendered illustration, meaning she ended up falling a bit more into an uncanny zone. And then in 2022, I signed my art piece with my YouTube name for the first time, as I had decided that year that I wanted to give YouTube a go. And then by 2023, I'd worked super hard all year trying to master every single aspect that I could within my own art, and taking it and my own future really, really seriously. And then 2024 happened. 2024 was an incredibly difficult year for me. A lot of things in my personal life were both very messy and very scary, and it ultimately left me a lot less focused on the things that brought me joy, like my art. It's really weird to look back on. I heard a saying once that if you put a frog into warm water and then slowly brought that water to a boil, the frog wouldn't leave the water because it doesn't realize how hot it's getting and how it's hurting it. And suddenly being face to face with what my temperature was at was a really hard lesson to go through. But surprisingly, the world didn't stop spinning, and the morning sun didn't suddenly stop showing up, and with enough time those burns began to heal, just like it always eventually will. Things got better. With that, I faced 2025. 2025 has really been a year of getting back into the swing of things. It's been a lot of both healing and learning about myself, and it's been a lot of hard work too. This year I decided to take YouTube seriously again, and to put myself out there to find more art friends, which has been absolutely freaking awesome. You can check out my collabs playlist if you want. It should be up on my channel, I think. By the time I post this, there might only be one on there, but there are more on the way, without spoiling too much. In all honesty, I think a big part of why I wanted to make this video and properly document my redraw this year was to sort of be there again for that inner child in me. The one that first created this character, who sat down and drew this pastel girl to help her through the time that she was going through back then. This year, I wanted to make Penelope hers again. And I'm really thankful that I was able to share that with you all. And with that, I think that's all I have for today. So thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you are at all interested in seeing more of me or my characters, then I have recently gotten out another character design video where I go super deep into the lore between these girls I made. I'm really proud of it. Or if you want to check out any of my other videos, I'd just be really happy to see you stick around. Either way, I really hope you all take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. Cozy out.